Hey guys, welcome back. This is the story about what if Naruto had the Jougan. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well, it really means a lot. So let's start the what if. First match. Uchiha Sasuke versus Tenten. I need all but the named competitors to move themselves to the observation deck so we can begin the preliminary matches for the third exam of the Chunin selection exams, said Aoba. First up, Uchiha Sasuke versus Tenten. Everybody moved to the upper deck to watch the coming fight, except for Kakashi, who stopped next to Sasuke. Remember what we discussed, Sasuke? I will interfere if the cursed seal begins to manifest itself. Limit the use of your Sharingan, but try avoid using it if possible. Kakashi never looked up from his book as he made his way up to where Naruto and Sakura stood leaning on the rails of the observation deck. Why the long face, Naruto? I don't know who to cheer for. Sure, Sasuke is my teammate, but Tenten and I train together, said Naruto. She's helped me loads with my kenjutsu. Yosh! I find it very youthful that you would consider supporting Tenten even if she is facing your own teammate. I think she would understand if you supported your teammate, said Madogai. Go Tenten, shouted Lee. Sasuke and Tenten were observing the other coolly, several meters apart. Whenever you're ready. Fight, announce Aoba. Last year's Rookie of the Year, Hyuga Niji. Uchiha Sasuke, the current year's #1 rookie. I wonder how I'll match up, thought Tenten as she confidently drew a kunai and smirked. You might want to give up now, you won't even get close. Of course, confident was what she didn't feel, as she remembered what had happened in the forest. His speed was remarkable and she wasn't altogether sure that even Niji could follow it. However, the black markings weren't there, so she knew that while they were dormant she had a chance. If only she could keep her distance. She flicked the kunai at him and with remarkable speed he flipped out a kunai and deflected it. As he did so, she jumped into the air flinging multiple shurikens at him. He effortlessly deflected them all, without use of the Sharingan. All the while both Lee and Guy were both cheering her on, yelling about the springtime of youth and all that. Naruto, however, was becoming very irritated with them. As you see, Naruto, Tenten already has her cheerleaders, so it would be alright if you were to support Sasuke, said Kakashi reading his Ika Paradise Volume 3. As soon as he said it, both Sakura and Ino could be heard yelling loudly for Sasuke. It appears that Sasuke already has his own, much less creepy, cheerleaders as well. Kakashi is just jealous because his flames of youth don't burn as brightly as mine, exclaimed Guy. You say something? Asked Kakashi, barely glancing at Guy. Naruto only became more agitated when Guy went on about how hip and cool Kakashi was. Naruto decided to put some space in between Kakashi, Guy and Lee and himself by walking over to stand next to Hinata. Said Kunoichi immediately blushed bright red and let out a small squeak. Are you alright, Hinata? Asked Naruto. Kurenai momentarily took her focus off the match to watch their small interaction. Not trusting her own voice, Hinata merely nodded wildly. Are you sure? You look flushed, said Naruto, putting his good hand on her forehead. After what happened earlier, I'd hate to see anything happen to you, he said in a concerned tone. This only made Hinata turn cherry red. I'm fine, Naruto-kun. She barely whispered. Naruto turned his attention back to the match after giving Hinata one last look of concern. Hinata, however, couldn't focus on anything except the boy next to her, whom she was very pointedly not looking at. Kurenai only looked on in amazement. Can he really be that clueless? Not bad, Sasuke, said Tenten with a small grin. But I've been training for the last year with a prodigy that might be even better than you, so you had best be able to do much better. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, trying to anticipate what she was going to try next. Sasuke drew another kunai and took the Uchiha second stance. She began to run behind him, careful to keep her distance. Sasuke continued to follow her with his eyes, not bothering to activate the Sharingan, as her speed was nothing compared to either Rock Lee or Orochimaru. She then took to the air doing a flip high above him, while she pulled out a large scroll and spun it around her. Activating his Sharingan to only one tomo in each eye, he watched as she ran her hand across each of the seals on the long scroll as it spun around her. Suddenly, he saw a barrage of kunai and shurikens flying towards him. It was only with the Sharingan that he managed to dodge or deflect each and every single weapon she had summoned at him. Impressive, she breathed as she landed. But you can't do that forever. Sasuke, not one for witty repertoire, charged at her. He threw both of his drawn kunai at her and started doing some hand seals as she unfurled a scroll and shot out a dozen shuriken. Kunai Kage Bushin no Jutsu, Kunai Shadow Clone Technique. Each kunai simply became a dozen and overwhelmed the shuriken Tenten had launched. Tenten did a backflip, touching down on the wall before launching herself high into the air, avoiding Sasuke's technique. Stupid Teimei. Naruto hissed under his breath. I find one jutsu to make me. One jutsu I can use better than anyone and he has to bastardize it like that. Sakura rolled her eyes at Naruto, though she could understand why he was upset. I've seen the Sandaime use a similar jutsu involving shuriken, responded Kakashi. It uses much less chakra than an actual Kage Bunshin, though he really should be more careful with the amount of chakra he uses. You'll just have to come up with something a little more unique, said Sakura, not wanting to think about what would happen should Sasuke's cursed seal activate. Naruto grimaced. I'm sure if anyone can do it, it's you. Naruto-kun, commented Hinata shyly, briefly looking at Naruto before focusing back on the match blushing. Naruto smiled, thanks Hinata-chan. She was glad he hadn't looked at her because she only turned redder from there. Sasuke doing more hand seals continued to follow Tenten's movements. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu. Tenten twisted and turned in midair to avoid each of the fireballs that were shot at her. She landed gracefully. I had hoped to save this one for the finals, but you're far too good for anything else. She then pulled out 2 scrolls. Feel proud, only my teammates and sensei have seen this technique. Not even your teammate, Naruto, has had a glimpse of it yet. Only Niji and Gai sensei have completely defended themselves against this jutsu. Lee's speed even has trouble with it, so prepare yourself. So, she's using that technique, commented Gai. That impressive, Gai? Asked Kakashi, barely glancing up from his book. Gai nodded, indeed it is. I apologize in advance, as it looks like your student will not win this match. It would be unwise to count Sasuke out just yet. After all, his bloodline limit hadn't even activated yet when he beat many of Niji's scores in the academy, countered Kakashi. Sasuke, as he is now, was unable to even touch Lee just before the first exam. I find your faith in your pupil both admirable and youthful, but he won't beat Tenten, stated Gai. What was that? Asked Kakashi, seemingly no longer listening to Gai. Gai merely sputtered about how hip and modern Kakashi's reply was. Tenten placed both scrolls on either side of her, making sure they were balanced perfectly on their side, standing vertically. She then did 5 hand seals before crossing her arms, a determined look on her face. Sushuryu, twin rising dragons. There was an explosion of smoke which made Sasuke cover his face reflexively. He knew the attack was coming, so he summoned more chakra to his eyes, activating the second tomo in each. He hoped he wouldn't need it for too long as he could feel his chakra draining rapidly and the urges for the cursed seal to be released. He flinched at the slight pain at the base of his neck, but chose to ignore it. 2 dragons made of billowing smoke shot out from where Tenten approximately was. Sasuke, as well as the others, watched in amazement as they began to twirl around each other, before changing back into the scrolls. It was then Sasuke realized his mistake. As the smoke cleared, Tenten was still crouched where she was. Before Sasuke could do anything, she disappeared in a blur of motion, jumping between the spiraling scrolls, twirling around like a torrential hurricane. She touched various seals on the scrolls, summoning a weapon and throwing it almost as she received it. Sasuke couldn't help be impressed by her skill, as she wasn't even aiming and was still managing to hit nearly dead on her target. He was certain her accuracy was something even Itachi would be jealous of. The only reason she missed was because he was either deflecting her weapons or dodging them, but only just barely. Even with the Sharingan, the amount of weapons and the rapid repetition of each volley were nearly overwhelming. Sasuke's stamina and chakra capacity didn't last as long as he liked, as he felt another pulse from the seal. The moment's distraction was all Tenten needed to score some glancing blows to the Uchiha prodigy. No major injuries, but enough to slow him down some. "Ichen. Was that all?" Sasuke asked, his eyes back to their normal onyx color. "Your teammates are far weaker than I thought." Tenten just looked at him with a fiery expression, as she took to the air again. "It's not done yet." As she shouted this, she pulled back with her arms and Sasuke noticed the wires attached to each of the weapons scattered all around him. Now he realized why only Niji and Guy were able to defend against this technique, as one would have to be incredibly fast or be able to see 360 degrees all at once. Activating his Sharingan proved to be a mistake, however, as he gripped his shoulder in pain and fell to a knee. The cursed seal began to activate itself. "Come on, Sasuke," shouted a familiar voice. "How do you expect to show how strong the Uchiha clan really is if you can't hold your own in a small fight like this?" Naruto shouted, "Is it all just a bunch of hype from some arrogant assholes?" "Damn it! That Teimei is mocking me," thought Sasuke angrily as he not only forced down the pain, but the cursed seal as well. "What the hell?" Anko thought in shock. He forced it back by sheer willpower. Kakashi smirked under his mask. "That is why I passed this team." Tenten pulled back on the stings and manipulated the weapons to all attack Sasuke at once from all directions. Much to her surprise, Sasuke jumped into action when he was barely vertical before. A kunai in each hand, he managed to deflect many of the weapons being sent after him with much more proficiency than before, his Sharingan spinning wildly. She noticed him running through a set of hand seals she was unfamiliar with. Tenten tried to prevent him from completing his technique when she was caught off guard as he caught one of her weapons, placing the wire between his teeth as he completed the final seal. "Tora! A Katan Jutsu," she thought. "Katan, Ryuka no Jutsu." A large stream of fire made its way towards Tenten. Her eyes widened in realization and fought vigorously to disconnect the weapons from his fingers. She barely landed when Sasuke threw 6 more kunai at her. She crossed her arms to block instinctively, but none of them came near her. However, each of the kunai were attached to each other with wire very much like the ones she had used in her Sushuryu. Because she had crossed her arms, she was now secured tightly to the wall with no change of escape. Sasuke suddenly appeared in front of her with another kunai at her throat. "Concede. The match is over, winner." "Uchiha Sasuke," announced Aoba. Sasuke then cut Tenten down from the wall, before leaning up against it for support. "Not bad, I didn't think it could be beaten like that," said Tenten with a small smile. "I was sure I had you." "You would have if the dobe hadn't have said anything," replied Sasuke. "Yeah, he does tend to bring out the best in people, doesn't he?" she said, smiling in Naruto's direction. Kakashi then appeared in a swirl of leaves. "Congratulations, you both did remarkably well," he said to them. "It's time, Sasuke." With a small nod from Sasuke, Kakashi grabbed onto his shoulder and used Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, to teleport them away. Naruto looked down where Kakashi and Sasuke disappeared from with an aggravated expression on his face. "Show off. When I finally learn that technique, I'm going to master it better than anyone." Sakura merely rolled her eyes at what she and Sasuke were now calling Naruto's Shunshin rant. Though, she had little doubt that when he did learn it, he would make it his own. After all, though she was loath to admit it, his Oiroke no Jutsu was impressive despite being totally unacceptable and completely perverted. Kakashi had refused to teach Naruto how to do the jutsu, stating that he didn't have the necessary control for it, but Sakura was almost certain it was because it was something he could use to hold over Naruto's head for an indefinite amount of time. "Hey, Naruto," said Tenten, coming up to the observation platform. Naruto merely gulped and backed up towards Hinata, who nearly fainted from his close proximity. I understand he's your teammate, but you wouldn't be half as good with that sword of yours if it wasn't for me. All that time we trained together didn't mean anything, did it? She frowned. I thought that maybe you'd cheer for me just a little bit. I thought we were friends. But I mean, it's just, you see, Naruto sputtered pitifully, his eyes practically begging for forgiveness. Tenten nearly doubled over in laughter as Naruto tried in vain to even sputter a full sentence to explain himself. Don't worry, Naruto, I'm not mad, she said smiling, you're just too easy to tease sometimes. Ah, the flames of youth burns brightly with you too, shouted Lee, giving them a thumbs up, his teeth shining. I will have to train twice as hard now to make sure my flames of youth do not diminish so that it may forever rival yours. And if Lee can't do that, I will train 3 times as hard, Guy declared. And if he cannot do that, I will train 4 times as hard, shouted Lee. Sensei. Lee. Guy Sensei. Lee. A sunset beach appeared behind them as they began to embrace each other, praising the other's passion for the flames of youth. Hinata discreetly activated her Byakugan, but she couldn't see through the mysteriously activated Genjutsu. Naruto couldn't believe that even his Jougan was fooled by it, as he currently had it activated trying to manage the impossible. Yuhi Kurenai even did a seal to try and dispel it, to no avail. You think you guys have it bad? We're on their team. Sighed Tenten. A/N, I know it's probably cliché and overused, but I didn't have a truly original Guy/Lee moment, so I decided to go ahead and add one here. Most all of the good fics have them, and I didn't think this one should be any different. Don't worry, I won't have it happen in every scene that I have both Guy and Lee in it, just when the situation truly calls for it. A cough from the fighting area caught everyone's attention. Hinata deactivated her Byakugan and Naruto closed his Jougan before anyone noticed. Now that I have everyone's attention, Aoba said in an annoyed tone, let's see the next matchup. He then turned to the large screen overhead that was randomly selecting names. Second match. Akimichi Choji vs. Sabaku no Temari. Can Akimichi Choji and Sabaku no Temari report to the competition area? Asked Aoba. Choji timidly made his way down to the fighting area, Naruto and Ino cheering him on as Shikamaru wished him luck. Chino, Hinata, and Kiba were nervous for the big-boned boy as they had seen what her teammate could do. The blonde Suna Kunoichi merely glided down on her fan, a confident smirk on her face. I'm afraid your path ends here. You will go no farther. There are 3 moons on my fan, when you see the 3rd one, you've lost. Don't underestimate me, shouted Choji. Sabaku no Temari vs Akimichi Choji, fight, shouted Aoba. Then come at me with all you've got. Fatso. She said with a confident smirk, all the while remaining completely calm. She's done it now, said Ino excitedly. She doesn't know what she's in for. Troublesome, muttered Shikamaru. As much as it pains me to say it, Choji's going to lose. How can you say that, Shika? Demanded Ino, he's been your best friend for ages. Friend or not, it doesn't change the outcome of what the match will be, he said lazily. What do you mean, Shikamaru? Asked Naruto. Shikamaru merely sighed, it's too troublesome to explain, just watch, you'll see soon enough. I'm not fat. I'm big-boned. Hooray for big-boned people. Choji shouted, Baika no Jutsu. Nikuden Sensha. Choji ballooned to many times his size, and his appendages receded into his body, and he began to spin faster and faster. He started directly for Temari, but somehow was rolled right by her. Pathetic, it looks like I won't even have to try hard, she taunted as her fan was now open to its 1st moon. But how? Asked Ino, he was headed straight for her and she didn't even move. It must have something to do with that fan, observed Tenten. Choji charged at her again, only to be blown up into the air as she swung her fan at him. She placed the fan at her side, revealing the 2nd moon. Unlike the fight with Zaku earlier, Choji had a ceiling to worry about as he slammed into it hard. His rotation came to a stop and he fell back down to the ground. Choji was dazed as he tried to stand up. Temari smirked, "I'm surprised you made it this far with such pathetic skills. There's no sense in drawing it out much longer." She let her fan open up to the third and final moon. "Choji, watch out," shouted Shikamaru. "Get out of there." Everyone, including Choji, was so shocked by this outburst that Choji didn't even see Temari's next attack coming until it was too late. "Kamaitashi no Jutsu, cutting whirlwind technique," she shouted, swinging her fan. She unleashed a giant tornado straight at the big-boned Konohanin that went vertical as soon as he was caught in its vortex. Choji was spinning around violently and was sliced up in various places all over his body as he screamed out in pain. "There's no escape for him, that entire tornado is saturated with chakra," said Niji. "It's over." Choji was dumped unceremoniously to the ground as the whirlwind died down. "I'm not impressed by the so-called strength of Konoha," Temari said arrogantly. She looked up at the observation deck to see the kid with the pineapple haircut glaring at her, while the blonde girl next to him was looking at their teammate in horror. She felt a brief spike of familiar feeling, killer intent directed at her, and for once it wasn't Gaara. That wasn't a soothing thought when she looked over at the blonde Jinchuriki from Konohagakure no Sato. The winner of the match, Sabaka no Temari, announced Aoba. Temari walked back up to where her brothers were as Choji was carried out by Mednines on a stretcher. "Sheesh, I hope my match is as easy as that one," said Kankuro. "If not, I might have to actually break a sweat." "The next matchup is," stated Aoba. Third match. Nara Shikamaru vs. Kin Tsuchi. This match seemed to be predetermined from the beginning, with Kin using Senbon with bells on them to activate a sound-activated genjutsu to render Shikamaru helpless. Unfortunately for her, Shikamaru was 3 steps ahead of her as he used the strings the Senbon were attached to trap her in his Kage-main no Jutsu. He then proceeded to throw a kunai at her head and then bash her head into the nearby wall, knocking her out. "I have to admit, while the match was boring, the way he won was pretty cool," commented Naruto. "The winner, Nara Shikamaru," said Aoba, impressed with the genin's intellect. The next matchup is fourth match. Sabaka no Gaara vs. Dosu Kinyuta. "Can Sabaka no Gaara and Dosu Kinyuta come down to the fighting area?" requested Aoba. "I apologize, but I must withdraw," said Dosu. "His abilities are far beyond mine." Gaara looked at him in disgust and annoyance. Dosu didn't care. He knew Orochimaru might punish him for forfeiting the match, but he knew it would be a lot worse if he somehow managed to damage the ultimate weapon for Orochimaru's plan. Aoba sighed, "Very well. Winner, Sabaku no Gaara." Let's now see what we have for the next match. Fifth match. Aburame Sachino vs. Akado Yoroi. Aburame Sachino and Akado Yoroi report to the fighting area, said Aoba. Finally, the first member of both Kabuto's team and Kurenai's teammate would finally fight. "Kick his ass, Sachino," shouted Kiba. "Good luck, Sachino-kun," said Hinata quietly. Sachino slightly nodded his head, but said nothing to his teammates. Naruto turned to Kiba and Hinata. "He doesn't talk much, does he?" "Not really," answered Kiba. "It was kind of creepy at first, but you get used to it." Sachino's eyebrow twitched, but it went widely unnoticed by the others. Sachino stood there facing down his opponent silently, studying him intently. Yoroi was smirking behind his Mac, thinking the silent rookie was going to be easily taken out. "Aburame Sachino, Akado Yoroi. Fight," shouted Aoba. Yoroi charged at Sachino, his hands glowing with flaming chakra. Sachino blocked, but Yoroi merely grabbed onto his wrist with one hand and Sachino's throat with the other. "Big mistake, rookie." He laughed. "Soon all of your chakra will be depleted, leaving me the victor." On the contrary, you obviously don't know much about Aburames. Said Sachino calmly, you see, we barely have enough chakra to complete most of the academy-level jutsus because we already have our chakra in a state of constant drainage. Small holes appeared in Sachino's face and wrist and insects started crawling out of him. What the f? Shouted Yoroi in surprise, jumping away from Sachino, thousands of bugs swarming all over him. I'm the worst possible opponent for you, as my Kekkei insects will feast off your chakra, weakening you and making your attack useless, stated Sachino. While you may be able to drain chakra from your opponents, it still requires a minute amount to do so. They'll leave you just enough so it won't kill you, but only just. Yoroi tried to swat the bugs away, but they swarmed him and eventually he lost consciousness. Proctor, the match is over. He won't be getting up, said Sachino as he adjusted his sunglasses. And I thought he was creepy when I thought he just never talked, commented Naruto. You get used to that after a while too, said Kiba. That was just you, said Ino, shivering in disgust. Sakura said nothing, but silently she agreed with Ino. Though she wouldn't hold it against the boy, after all, he was almost no different than Naruto as far as having something living inside of him. So he's from the clan with the insects that live inside of them, noted Niji, a very powerful adversary indeed. Sachino made it back to where his teammates. Well fought, Sachino, congratulated Kurenai. You rocked, shouted Kiba, yours was the quickest match yet. Congratulations, Sachino-kun, said Hinata. Before the next match could begin, Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves on the observation deck. So, what did I miss? He asked, smiling, though it was hard to tell because only his right eye on his face was visible. Damn it, shouted Naruto, I want you to teach me that as soon as this exam is over, he demanded. You say something? Asked Kakashi as he flipped open his book, which Naruto promptly snatched away. Nah. Teach me Shunshin, or I vaporize the book, threatened Naruto. Kakashi's eye widened in surprise. Alright, I'll do it, but please give me back my book. It's an ultra-rare, authentic, gold special edition signed by the author himself, pleaded Kakashi. Kurenai, Anko, and Sakura's eyes narrowed at the mention of the book, while nearly everyone else stared and sweat dropped at the scene in disbelief. As soon as Naruto gave Kakashi back the book, he cradled it to his chest. Don't worry, my precious. I won't let the bad man hurt you. He then realized where he was and what he was doing and promptly put the book away. He was thanking Kami at that very moment that he wore a mask that covered well over the majority of his face. Kakashi-sensei. Is Sasuke-kun alright? Asked Sakura concernedly. He'll be fine, he's currently resting at the moment, but he should be able to talk to you both tomorrow, Kakashi informed her and Naruto. Naruto then told Kakashi what had happened in the previous matches as the next match to be announced was. Sixth match. Yamanaka Ino versus Haruno Sakura. You have got to be kidding me, said Shikamaru. Of all the people here, of all the match combinations, they had to do this one. Go Sakura-chan. You can do it, shouted Naruto. He can be so annoying sometimes, said Ino, looking over at Naruto cheering on Sakura. We're not much better though, especially with the way we've treated him and everyone else, said Sakura sadly. Ino looked at Sakura in confusion. What do you mean, forehead girl? Just that, Ino, is it really all worth it? She asked her rival. Sometimes we just have to grow up and move on. Sure, Naruto may be annoying sometimes, but he's always there when I've needed him, even when I didn't know it. And Sasuke-kun. It's no wonder why he's always ignored us, we were annoying. Tell me, Ino, why did you become a ninja? The question totally caught Ino off guard. I don't really know. I won't compete with you over Sasuke-kun with you anymore, Ino, we're beyond that now. I admit that some of the reasons for becoming a kunoichi were probably wrong, And if I'm honest with myself, I probably should have never even considered becoming a ninja, said Sakura, but recently I've realized something. All this time I have been watching them get stronger, and all I can do is watch their backs as they fight battle after battle, protecting me from our enemies. If I don't start taking my duties as a kunoichi seriously, who knows what could happen to me. There will be a time when I'm all alone. A time when Naruto and Sasuke-kun or even Lee won't be able to save me. But I'm not going to be that girl anymore. The helpless damsel hiding behind her protectors, hoping everything will be alright, because eventually they won't be, and where would that leave me? Sakura took off her haite and tied it around her forehead, her eyes filled with a resolve and confidence that Ino had never seen before in her former best friend. You're no longer that girl who used to cry about kids making fun of her abnormal forehead, are you, Sakura? You finally bloomed, haven't you? I'm no longer going to stand in your shadow. The day we became genin, I promised I wouldn't lose to you. Now it's time to live up to that promise, to show Sasuke-kun and Naruto and everyone else just how far I've come. Don't hold back, Ino. If you do, I'll never forgive you, said Sakura sternly. Alright Sakura, but I expect a good matchup, said Ino smiling. She untied her haite, taking it off her waist and placing it on her forehead as well. The two kunoichis had a much fiercer battle than expected from the two of them. They fought with their all, with Ino at one point managing to trap Sakura using her hair as chakra strings to snare the pink-haired kunoichi so she could possess the girl. Sakura, however, was saved by a mix of Naruto's cheering and her second personality, as well as her own will to win. Finally, it all came down to one charge. The two charged at each other until they met in the center. I declare, Aoba announced, Haruno Sakura the winner of the sixth match. Both girls had gone for right hooks, but at the last moment Sakura ducked under Ino's attack, and using as much momentum as she could, landed a powerful uppercut knocking the blonde kunoichi out cold. Naruto and Rock Lee ran out to the fighting area to collect Ino and help a very tired Sakura back up to the observation deck. That's unexpected, commented Shikamaru. I'd have expected them to tie by knocking each other out. He sighed. Ino is going to be so troublesome once she finds out she lost to Sakura. Aoba turned to the screen to call the next match. Seventh match. Zaku Abumi versus Sabaka no Kankuro. Che. I don't care if they are our allies, an opponent is an opponent and a fight is a fight, and I've been itching for some action since that Sasuke guy messed up my arms, said Zaku to Dosu. It would not do well to underestimate Kankuro, he's powerful in his own right even without his brother to hide behind, warned Dosu. You worry far too much, a true ninja doesn't run from a battle, said Zaku arrogantly. Abaka charges in blindly, use your head in this fight or you will lose, Dosu scolded him. Just watch as I tear him apart, boasted Zaku as he made his way to the fighting area. So? He wants a fight, said Kankuro to Temari. I do hope he proves more of a challenge than that Konohanin you fought. Doubtful, I'm surprised he'd still competing with his injuries. End it quickly, we don't have all day, said Temari coldly. Yeah, quit being so pushy, said Kankuro as he left his older sister and younger brother. Zaku and Kankuro both stood motionlessly, staring at each other, both with confident smirks on their faces. Zaku Abumi versus Sabaku no Kankuro. Ready? Fight, shouted Aoba. Neither combatant moved. Shall we get this started, or are you going to stare stupidly at me all day, asked Kankuro. Don't underestimate me, said a smirking Zaku. Why don't you show me what you're made of? With pleasure, said Kankuro, taking the bandaged bundle off his back. Zaku saw his opening as he pulled his arm out of his sling and shouted, Zenkaha. A large burst of air shot out from his arm and blasted Kankuro. He dropped his bundle and rolled back several feet. Ha! My sister hits harder than you, taunted Kankuro, you imitation wind attacks are pathetic. I won't even have to take off the kitty gloves. Imitation Take this, shouted Zaku angrily, pulling out his other arm, Zenkakyakua. Kankuro took the blast full on. He slammed against the wall, which shattered against the impact. He slumped to the ground, flat on his face. "It's over," said Sokka confidently. "Not yet," said Kankuro weakly, straining to get up. "I'll be merciful and end your life," said Zaku, "a weakling like you shouldn't be a shinobi anyway." He grabbed Kankuro's hood, while drawing a kunai, ready to slit Kankuro's throat. "Say goodbye." "Goodbye," said Kankuro, but the sound came from behind Zaku. He looked at the Kankuro he had and saw the face cracking off, revealing a marionette puppet. "What?" He turned around to see Kankuro being unraveled from the bundle, stings made of chakra coming from his fingers. Zaku's eyes widened as he realized his mistake. Shit! 2 additional arms then burst out of the puppet on each side and wrapped themselves around Zaku. "How do you like Karasu?" he taunted, "it ends now." He manipulated the strings, and the grip on the arms tightened. Zaku screamed out in pain, and Karasu's mouth opened and a small cloud of poison was released in Zaku's face. "Damn it!" Zaku mumbled as he slumped to the ground, beaten by Kankuro's puppet. The winner of the 7th match. Sabaku no Kankuro. "All too easy," declared Kankuro arrogantly as he rejoined his siblings. "Shut up," said Gaara, who had hardly said a thing the entire time. Kankuro did so promptly, and even Temari was hesitant to make another sound, both fearing for their lives. The screen began to cycle through the remaining names. 8th match. Rock Lee vs. Tsurugi Misumi. "Both fighters report to the staging area," said Aoba. The 8th match. Rock Lee vs. Tsurugi Misumi. Fight! Rock Lee took to the Goken stance immediately. "Rock Lee, the taijutsu kid," said Misumi, "I am the worst opponent for you, as my abilities will make your simple taijutsu useless. Give up before you get hurt." "If I am to prove my nindo, I cannot give in to your demand," said Lee. "I will show everyone here that one can become great with just the use of taijutsu." "Don't say I didn't warn you, kid," said Misumi as he charged Lee. Lee countered with a punch and became a blur of motion all around the Konohanin. The more and more Lee punched, the less it seemed to affect Tsurugi Misumi. "Konoha de Zenpu!" shouted Lee as he kicked Misumi full force in the head. The Konohanin was knocked down to the ground, his neck at an unnatural angle. Everyone stared at Lee in horror at what had happened. Lee couldn't believe it himself. Suddenly, there came a laugh from the corpse as he righted his neck. "But how?" asked Lee, shocked. "It's my special ability, the Nan no Kaizo, soft physic modification. It allows me to dislocate any and all of my bones and control my body with the use of my chakra," said Misumi. "As I said, it's the worst possible match-up for your ultimate taijutsu. No matter, I will find a way to defeat you," said Rock Lee confidently. "It will only prove my nindo in doing so." "Lee! Take them off," shouted Guy. "But... Guy-sensei. You said I could only do that to protect someone who is precious to me," replied Lee. "Don't worry, Lee, I'll allow it this time," shouted Guy. "Yes," saluted Lee. "Like taking off a couple of pounds is going to make a difference," mocked Misumi. This was thought by many of the others watching the match. Only Kakashi, Naruto, Guy, Niji, and Tenten seemed to believe that the removal of Lee's weights seemed to be some sort of trump card. As odd as Naruto found both Rock Lee and Mato Guy, he had to admit they knew their stuff and were great at what they do. Still, even Naruto was unprepared for what happened next. Only Team Guy and Kakashi did not gape openly at the sight, though Kakashi did mentally admit to himself he was impressed, not that he'd ever tell Mato Guy that. Lee pulled down his orange leg warmers, revealing 2 fairly small weights with the word "guts" inscribed in them. Lee took them off and stood up holding them in his hands. He spread his arms out to either side of him and dropped the weights. The size of the craters made by the dropped weights was very impressive. Lee disappeared in a blur. "I can barely follow his movements anymore," said Naruto in astonishment. "I can barely see a green blur." Tenten looked impressed at Naruto. "That's why my Lee is a true genius of hard work," exclaimed Guy. Tsurugi Misumi's eyes widened in shock as Lee was now spinning all around him. Like before, Lee's hits seemed to have little effect, but this time Misumi was taking an active role in attempting to dodge or block Lee's attacks. He seemed to be getting more and more wore out, however, as with each attack he narrowly evaded or blocked, his movements were becoming more and more sluggish. However, as the fight drew on, even Lee was getting tired as Naruto pointed out that Lee was slowing, even if it wasn't by much. Wanting to finish this fight soon, Lee charged as Misumi and jumped into the air while spinning forward. "Konoha Raiken, Leaf Thunder Fist," he shouted, delivering a powerful punch to Misumi. Misumi's head snapped back and his whole body seemed to stretch as he was sent flying. "I see," observed Lee, "there seems to be a limit to your stretching. For me to end this quickly, I have no choice." He began to unwrap his bandages. "So," observed Dosu, "he's going to use that move. Prepare yourself. Kaimon, Kai, open gate, release. Kyumon, Kai, energy gate, release." Kakashi looked up from his book. "Guy, did you do that?" asked Kakashi with a somewhat shocked and aggravated tone. "It is as you suspect, Kakashi," said Guy. "So that boy, Amir Genin, has the use the Hashiman, 8 gates, asked Kakashi, "and what about the Urarenji, reverse lotus?" "Urarenji?" asked a confused Niji, looking at Kakashi and Guy curiously. Naruto, Tenten, and Sakura were paying close attention now too. "Yes," said Guy hesitantly. Kakashi narrowed his visible "Damn it, Guy. How many gates is he able to open?" "5, answered Guy. "Kakashi-sensei, what is the Hashiman and the Urarenji?" asked Sakura. "I know the Omote Renji, Lee used it when he helped us in during the second exam." It was a proud-looking Guy, not Kakashi, who explained to Sakura the basic learnings behind the 8 inner gates. "The Omote Renji is a move that opens the Kaimon, open gate," said Guy. He explained the effects of opening the first gate and its drawbacks afterwards. "What about the Urarenji?" she inquired. "It opens the second gate, the Kyumon, energy gate." He then explained that gate to Sakura. However, to complete the technique, one has to have the Simon, life gate, open. "But the Omote Renji puts enough strain on his body as it is, any more could," she exclaimed worriedly. "Exactly," Kakashi interrupted as he pulled up his Haite to watch Lee preforming the lotus. "By opening all the gates, one could gain temporary powers to surpass even a Kage. But that person would ultimately die." Sakura gasped at the information. Lee crossed his arms and seemed to be summoning great amounts of power. Lee's eyes were now pupilless and the veins on his head were bulging. "Simon Kai, life gate release." His skin began to turn red as raw, untamed power swirled around him. "Impressive," commented Kakashi, despite knowing Lee could open 5 of the 8 gates, to see him actually open 3 of them before his very eyes was still a sight to see. "Watch closely Naruto, Sakura, he's about to make his move." Lee began to glow green before he shot off like a rocket. Konoha Shofu, Leaf Rising Wind, he suddenly appeared in front of Misumi and kicked him solidly in the chin. The Konoha Nin shot up into the air despite his abilities to stretch and absorb impacts. Everyone in the room had to cover their faces from the explosion and shockwave of power. Lee suddenly appeared above Misumi and head-butted him hard. His opponent shocked towards the ground, but Lee was already behind him delivering a solid kick to his back, sending him back into the air. Everyone watched in awe as Tsurugi Misumi was being bounced around the fighting area like a small pinball. With a powerful backhand, sent the man shooting toward the floor. Lee appeared under him and jumped at him, kneeing him hard in the back. Lee reappeared back on the ground and jumped, traveling at an ever-high velocity as Misumi. He touched down on the ceiling of the fighting area before shooting back towards his opponent. "His muscles have ripped," observed Kakashi. "That's Lee," thought Niji, impressed. His Byakugan was activated as that was the only way he could follow Lee's movements to which he noted only Kakashi, Guy, the Hokage, and the Suna Jonin had no trouble following. Naruto also seemed to be able to follow Lee's movements, but only just barely, which actually did impress Neji, not that he would admit it, because he wasn't using his Jougan to do so. "This is the end," shouted Lee. Shumen, Kai, Wound Gate release. Misumi was going to try and counter, but his stretched fist missed Lee completely as he dematerialized from in front of the stretchy Konohanin. Lee rematerialized inside his guard and smashed his forearms and head full force into Tsurugi Misumi. He then shot back up to the ceiling again, only this time, his bandages were wrapped around Misumi's waist. That isn't the same move," thought Dosu in shock and awe at Lee's power and skill. Lee pulled back on his bandages as he shot back down to the ground, delivering a mighty palm thrust to Misumi's midsection. "You're a wrench." Both fighters hit the ground hard. Misumi left a crater, while Lee landed unceremoniously, bouncing once and rolling several yards away. The pain in his body was so great it was all he could do to stand. Misumi, however, was out cold. The winner of the 8th match. "Rock Lee," shouted Aoba, who had barely recovered from the shock of such a spectacular match. Hyuga Neji stared at the screen contemplating the opponents he had left as both Misumi and Rock Lee were carried off in stretchers. Kazama Naruto, Inuzuka Kiba, and Hyuga Hinata. Of the three of them, only Kazama was worth his time, even if he knew none of the three of them stood a chance. The Inuzuka was a mongrel, someone who used a dog in combat to make up for his own shortcomings. A savage beast who was more of a brawler and had shown no style whatsoever. Hinata-sama. The spoiled little girl was going to get what was coming to her if he had to face her. The only thing more satisfying that the beating he could slash would give her, would be to humiliate her and the entire main branch by watching her cower in fear and forfeit the match between the two of them. Kazama. He was an enigma. It was only the unknown factors that made him more on par with the Hyuga prodigy. However, Neji knew enough about the eye to know that he could easily beat the dobe of his younger cousin's class. Despite his Kekkei Genkai, how hard could it be to beat him? With time his power could rival Neji's, but it was too soon since he had left the academy, and no one could have improved that much. 9th match. Uzumaki Naruto vs. Inuzuka Kiba. "Alright," shouted Kiba, "this is going to be easy." Hinata was dismayed. Of the three left, one had been her teammate, one her cousin that she saw as an older brother, and the third, her crush, the one person she admired more than anyone save her own mother when she was still alive. She was now faced with two dilemmas. First, she couldn't decide if she should support Kiba or her precious Naruto-kun. The second, she was going to be facing Neji. "I'm going to advance for sure. I got lucky in drawing such a weak opponent," said Kiba smugly. "Kiba-kun. Naruto-kun. He is much stronger than you think." Hinata stuttered, standing up for Naruto. "Maybe, but I won't lose to the dobe," said a confident Kiba. "Hey Inutame. Get your ass down here so I can send you to the infirmary," shouted Naruto from the fighting area. Kiba growled in annoyance, "Big talk coming from you, dobe." "Kiba," said a normal silent Shino, "do not underestimate Naruto. My Kekkeichu have been reacting strangely to him since he and his team arrived. It would not do to take him lightly." "Che. I won't even have to take this fight seriously," said Kiba confidently. "Look at his arm, he can barely even move it." He then jumped down to the fighting area where Naruto was waiting for him. "For you, Inutame, I'll only need one arm," said Naruto as he eased into an actual fighting stance. He put his left arm behind his back and his right arm in front of him, as he spread his feet shoulder-length apart, right in front of the left. His charred hand curled into a fist. Naruto winced visibly at the pain. "Quit trying to show off," shouted Kiba. The 9th match of the preliminary round, Uzumaki Naruto vs. Inuzuka Kiba, "Fight," shouted Aoba. "Come at me with everything you have," challenged Naruto. "Gladly," replied Kiba. He did a hand seal. Shikyaku no Jutsu, 4 legs technique. Kiba's already longer than average canines seemed to sharpen as his nails seemed to sharpen into claws. His eyes and mannerisms also seemed to take on a more feral look as his muscles seemed to bulge a bit. Akamaru, stay back. I'll take him down alone. Akamaru yelped in response. To everyone's astonishment, Naruto made a hand seal with his left hand. Neji activated his Byakugan and watched as the chakra formed in Naruto's hand. What are you waiting for, Inutame? I want you to put up some sort of fight before I put you down in one move like Paley's up there. He yelled at Kiba, jerking his head in Neji's direction. Had he taken his eyes off of Kiba to look at Neji, he'd have seen a glare that would have made Zabuza and Kakashi's combined killing intent seem tame. Each of the Jonins were shocked by not only the state mate, but also by Neji's lack of refute and the glare he was giving the blonde Konohanin. Hinata's eyes widened in shock as she looked back and forth between her infuriated cousin and a confident Naruto who seemed to be in perfect control of his fight. Her admiration for Naruto grew. Naruto-kun. You've got their attention. Show them. Show everyone what you can do. Big talk, shouted Kiba, you're going down. Kiba disappeared in a blur of motion. When this happened, Naruto smirked. He had completed the final 5 hand seals required for his next attack. Kiba saw the smirk and tried to slow down. He began to skid on the stone floor. Gukatun, Inochi and Ku no Kabushi, shouted Naruto as he swung his inflamed arm at Kiba. Kiba just barely managed to evade the fiery uppercut, but his jacket and face were still lightly singed. He jumped backwards to get out of the way as Naruto brought his hand back down. When Naruto struck the ground, there was a small explosion. Many looked at the battle in awe of the sight. Kiba was among the first to recover. How? What the hell? Naruto's eyes narrowed. Maybe now you'll take this fight seriously. Kiba was slightly intimidated when Naruto's eyes became slitted. Fine, then, I'm not holding back any longer, shouted Kiba. Don't cry when I snatch your dreams right from your fingers. Kiba drew 2 purple balls from the punch at his waist and threw them at Naruto's feet. They exploded in a large cloud of smoke. Before Kiba could move, there was a teal flash from inside the cloud and a small shockwave of power and the smoke as cleared. Try again, scolded Naruto. My nose is almost as good as yours, my hearing is better, and unlike you I can actually see through the smoke. I'm not going to let you charge into your own slaughter. Kiba growled in frustration and annoyance. Let's see how you like this. He then pulled out 2 small red pills, one was given to Akamaru and he took one for himself. Akamaru began shaking and his fur turned red. Hey, is that even legal? Naruto asked Aoba. Soldier pills, much like Kiba's dog, Chino's bugs, Kenkuro's puppets, and your sword are considered ninja tools. As such they are permissible, he replied. Fine, do your worst Inutame, said Naruto annoyed. Akamaru, shouted Kiba as he crouched low and formed a hand seal. Akamaru jumped on his back. Jujin Bunshin. Beast/human clone, with a puff of smoke Akamaru became an exact double of Kiba. Naruto looked bored. Please, twice the Inutame, twice the loss, he taunted. Naruto closed his eyes in concentration. His own nails became claws, and his whisker birthmarks widened and his own canines lengthened. Many around the room tensed, not knowing how to react, however they were somewhat reassured when they noticed Kakashi not making a move. You're outmatched, Kiba, give up. Che. What can you do? Asked Kiba mockingly. He nearly flinched back when Naruto opened not 2, but 3 eyes, 2 of them being slitted and blood red, the third, the one in the middle of his forehead, was slitted and blue. Up on the observation deck the people who had no prior knowledge of Naruto's Jougan jumped in shock as did a few that had seen it before. What the hell is that? Asked Temari. That is the Jougan, said her Jonin sensei, Baki. A rare Kekkei Genkai said to have been wiped out when a powerful demon attacked this village many years ago. The Yandere Hokage, Konoha no Kuroi Senko, was the only no person to possess this Kekkei Genkai. You would do well never to insult that I. Why? Asked Kankuro, as Baki's warning seemed off. You won't survive. With the emergence of the Yandere's son, our plans are now complicated. With the Kekkei Genkai alone, he might possibly match Gaara without its help. The fact that he's the one you said is a Jinchuriki like Gaara means that even with Shikaku's help, our victory is no longer assured. Baki said grimly. The Jougan's iris began to glow brightly. Kanashibari no jutsu, he shouted. More shock hit many around the room. That's an ANBU level technique, Naruto-kun. Thought the Sandaime, you've come far, haven't you? Naruto then charged at his opponent, his fist cocked back. Both Kiba and Akamaru tried to fight the jutsu to no avail. They stayed rooted in place as Naruto used Kiba's head as a springboard while fiercely driving his elbow into Akamaru's face. The Kiba look-alike was knocked back into the wall hard as the impact left a small crater. The Jujin Bunshin dispelled as Akamaru hit the floor. Akamaru, shouted Kiba. Still think I'm a simple dobe, taunted Naruto, who was panting heavily. His demonic features had receded, his now sapphire eyes weren't even slitted anymore. Suga, piercing Fang, shouted Kiba without warning. His attack slammed into Naruto head-on and he was sent flying through the air. Naruto hit the ground in a disheveled heap. Naruto! Naruto-kun, shouted Sakura and Hinata respectively. He's done. Kiba spat, he's not getting up. Wanna bet? I'm not losing to you. You're not going to stand in my way in becoming Hokage, said Naruto, wincing in pain. Still spouting off that garbage, taunted Kiba, you can barely move, your arm is useless. You got some lucky hits in, but in the end you're still just a simple dope. Face it, I'm more qualified to be Hokage than you are. Even with that eye trick you still couldn't beat me. Now, Kakashi tensed. How dare you mock me? Naruto growled. The air became heavy. Naruto's Jougan began to flow brightly as black chakra swirled around him. In a fight to become Hokage, you will always be the underdog, because I refuse to run away. To give up on my dream. I will be Hokage. Only Gaara was not afraid of the sight before him. Ino was having a sense of deja vu as she watched as Naruto's fury paralyzed nearly the whole room. Kiba was frozen in place as Naruto casually took a few steps towards him. It's about time you learned proper respect, Inutame, Naruto hissed as he concentrated everything he could on Kiba. Joganashi Kiku no Jutsu. The glow of Naruto's Jougan intensified as the area surrounding Kiba and Naruto turned pitch black. Then Naruto faded out of existence as well and Kiba was alone. Kiba began to panic. Hello, he called out. He realized he was in a genjutsu and bit down on his hand, but felt no pain. Shit! He cursed. Monster! Demon! Be gone! Leave our children alone! Get out of here, he heard various shouts of the villagers. He looked around and saw various people looking at him in disgust and hatred and even fear. They cursed him, through various objects, they scorned him. He was shunned. He watched as the people who were nice to him were punished harshly. Everywhere he turned he could feel their loathing. He watched as Kurenai, Sachino and Hinata, as well as the other rookies turning their backs on him. He was his own mother's look of contempt as she spat on him. Kiba looked pleadingly at Akamaru, but the dog let out a small whine and bowed his head before retreating into the crowd. It felt as if someone had jammed a kunai deep into his chest. He was alone, abandoned. But why? He didn't understand. Why? Then he saw something he'd never even seen in his worst nightmares, the visage of a fox as large as the tallest buildings he had ever seen. The fox had blood-red slitted eyes and 9 tails. He was staring into the face of the Kyubi no Kitsune, the same demon that was defeated by the Yandere Hokage. He wasn't sure why, but he was positive the fox had something to do with everything he'd seen and experienced. "Why?" he shouted at the fox. He suddenly came out of the genjutsu. He was on his knees, tears streaming down his face. Naruto gave him a pitying look. "Why?" he whispered. "Now you know a little of what it was like. But that barely scratches the surface," said Naruto, just loud enough for him and Kiba to hear. "That's why I will become Hokage, because I didn't give in and buckle under the pressure, because I will do my absolute best to make sure no one has to suffer like that ever." Kiba's hands were on his head as he tried to shake out the images. "Why?" "I can't answer that right now," said Naruto. "Examiner, it's over. He can no longer fight." Aoba nodded. The winner of the 9th match, he looked over at Naruto questioningly. Naruto shook his head slightly. "Uzumaki Naruto." Kiba was promptly taken to the infirmary to deal with whatever Naruto had done to him. He looked around the room. Everyone was in shock as they watched Naruto and Kiba stare each other down when Naruto's eyes started to glow. They were unprepared when Kiba suddenly slumped to the ground crying, asking why over and over. Only Kakashi recognized the technique Naruto used. "Was that necessary, Naruto? How did you manage to use the technique?" "The Jougan. It teaches me, sort of," explained Naruto. "It's only happened twice before, on the bridge and in the forest, when I used both the mortal and darkness flames for the first time. It's like the Jougan already knows what to do, and when it thinks I'm ready it just sort of puts the knowledge into my brain." Kakashi gained a thoughtful look. Hopefully the man the Sandaime contacted is in town, because his expertise will be needed before we can come to any solid conclusions to your observations. "Now the final match of the preliminaries," said Aoba. "Final match. Hyuga Hinata versus Hyuga Neji." "Hyuga Hinata versus Hyuga Neji, fight," shouted Aoba. The fight that followed was a brutal psychological one as Neji broke down barrier after barrier of the girl's confidence. Try as she might, she couldn't refute anything that he had said to her, and she was close to breaking down and forfeiting their match. She knew she couldn't beat him. She wasn't like Naruto-kun. He was strong and brave and never gave up, while she was frail and weak. Yet hope filled her when Naruto-kun spoke up for her and encouraged her. Every last bit of confidence she lost and more returned to her as Naruto cheered her on, but determination wasn't enough. Neji gradually but surely broke her down little by little. As he watched the match, Naruto was getting angrier and angrier with the way Neji was playing with Hinata, not even taking her seriously. It didn't help when Guy explained the main and branch houses of the Hyuga clan to him. Naruto's Jougan began to glow menacingly as Neji struck Hinata in the chest. White, she was hit with a soft palm strike, mixed with the abilities of the Hyuga fighting style, Jougan, gentle fist. It was deadly. Kakashi had to grab his shoulder when Hinata hit the floor, but she managed to stand up on her own. "I'm not going to take back my words," she said as she struggled to return to a vertical base, her breathing labored, blood trickling from her mouth. Neji was shocked by the pure righteous fury in her eyes. He saw her eyes cut back to where Naruto stood. "That's my Nindo," she gasped out, her voice filled with determination, her stance screamed defiance. Kurenai was impressed with Hinata. The young girl had come a long way from the timid little girl, whose own father considered a failure all those years ago. Hinata did something unexpected. She smiled even as her cousin still held that superior sneer. "Wow! Hinata! Who'd have thought she was so tough?" said Naruto, amazed. "She's a lot like you know," commented Tenten. "Come to think of it, she is always watching you," noted Sakura. "Ha?" Naruto asked, but got no answer in return. He turned his attention back to Hinata and Neji's fight, putting off what Sakura said for the time being. "Hinata!" For the first time, Hinata activated her Byakugan without the use of hand seals. As she took to the Jougan stance, she grabbed his chest and coughed up more blood. Niji did not care as he was prepared to defend himself. Naruto could hear the whispering of the others. Of how she wouldn't last, and how Niji was too strong. He became more and more frustrated as it went on. Finally, he had enough. "Hinata! You can do it! Do your best," he shouted. "Naruto-kun." She whispered. Niji was shocked when her smile faded once more into that determined look and she charged at him. "I've watched you all this time." For many years even, she thought as she battled on, "I don't know why, but when I watch you, I feel more courage within myself. Like I can accomplish anything if I try. Like I am worth something." Her thoughts were interrupted by a vicious palm strike to the face, and she was knocked back from Niji. She was able to remain standing, but she began to cough again. "Hinata!" Naruto gasped out. "Naruto-kun. I've only watched you, but finally," she thought as she charged Niji head-on again. "You're the one watching me. Naruto-kun." It was the final charge as Niji hit Hinata with yet another critical strike. Her Byakugan faded as she slumped to the ground. "Too stubborn for your own good. Your attacks had no effect on me to begin with. It's over," he said with prideful finality as his own Byakugan was deactivated. "Since Hyuga Hinata can no. Do not stop the match," shouted Naruto. "She can no longer fight. She's done Naruto baka," scolded Sakura. "Look," he said with a small smile. Hinata began to rise again. She had nothing left, just sheer determination and will to fight. "Why do you stand? If you push yourself anymore, you will die," Niji stated. She did not answer, and when she didn't he narrowed his eyes. "Why?" he demanded. Niji reactivated his Byakugan. "I can still fight," Hinata said. "There's no longer any point of continuing this." "You can barely stand," said Niji coldly. "You cannot change your fate. You have suffered greatly over the fate of the main and branch houses of the Hyuga clan. You may have cursed your own powerlessness and worked hard to rid yourself of your weakness, but you cannot change. This is destiny. There is no need to suffer any longer. Give up." "You are wrong, Niji Anai-san. Because I can see that you are suffering far more than I," she said, gasping for air. "You are the one who is confused and suffering over the fate of the main and branch families of the Hyuga clan." In a fit of anger, Niji charged Hinata head-on. "Niji! The match is over," shouted Aoba, but Niji ignored him, intent in silencing the young kunoichi whose words hit too close to home. Niji was engulfed in a puff of smoke. When it cleared, everyone nearly collapsed in shock. Niji was being held back by Guy, Kakashi, Kurenai, and Aoba, but that wasn't the shocking thing. What surprised everyone was the tip of Naruto's sword that was mere centimeters away from Niji's right eye as he stood between Hinata and Niji. This time all three eyes were slitted and crimson. The other Konohanins went down to the fighting area on instinct, rationality having left when Niji attempted to kill Hinata. "I don't pretend to understand anything about the Hyuga clan and the main and branch families. But I do know one thing. What you just tried to do was out of line. Naruto-kun." Hinata whispered, gasping for air, as she went into a coughing fit and collapsed to her knees. Kurenai released her hold on Niji to tend to Hinata. Naruto's eyes narrowed. "It's too bad they were able to stop you. Just a little more and you would have at least lost one eye. Eyes you seem to be awfully proud of." Before anyone could move, Ino intervened. "Naruto, don't. Just don't," she pleaded as she grabbed onto Naruto. She had already seen Sasuke change forever in her eyes. She didn't need Naruto to take that next step as well. It was now Dosu, Shikamaru, and Choji who were having feelings of déjà vu. "Please." Naruto lowered his blade, but did no sheath it. Ino maintained her grip around Naruto's waist. "Listen, Dobe. said Niji scathingly, you got lucky in the forest of death. But, I will warn you only once, on two things. First, you are a shinobi, stop it with that unsightly cheering for people you barely know. Second, a dropout will always be a dropout. They cannot change. They are forever fated to be losers, no matter how hard they try. Naruto started to step forward, his sapphire eyes still slitted, but he was held back by Ino. Do you want to find out for sure? He asked, as he became more and more furious with the superior smirk on Niji's face. Naruto, don't. Intervened Tenten as she looked at Niji scathingly, he's not worth it. Wait until the final exam, show him just what someone can do with hard work. Niji's eyes narrowed at Tenten's harsh words. Beat him again then. I'm sure Lee wouldn't mind if you did, he'd probably see you as a much more worthy rival than the Hyuga. Guy frowned as it seemed Niji's problems with the main branch had finally spilled over to other aspects of his life. He was glad that there would be no missions for his team for the next month, as he doubted Tenten would be willing to even train with Niji at all. Lee would at his request, but not even Lee would give Niji his all after the Hyuga's behavior. Naruto visibly relaxed, fine. He said with clenched teeth. Both Tenten and Ino took a step back from him as he turned towards Hinata's unconscious form. Anger, sadness, revulsion, pride and many other emotions flooded him as he looked upon her broken, but not beaten form. For one who has a Kekkei Genkai that sees everything, you are blind, Naruto said bluntly, his back to Niji. You think being a genius, a so-called prodigy, makes you strong. That because you were born with more talent than some people could ever hope to have, that you were fated to victorious, that it was your destiny to be strong. Bullshit. If you want to see real strength, look at Hinata. True strength doesn't come from natural ability or hard work. True strength comes from a willingness to never give up, and to protect and stand up for what is precious to you. Hinata understood that, and I'll prove it to you when I hand you your ass in the finals, said Naruto angrily. Niji's eyes narrowed during Naruto's speech, but before he could even think to try and rush the annoying genin, both Guy and Kakashi tightened their grips on the Hyuga prodigy. Naruto watched as the Mednines and Kurenai left with Hinata. Kurenai turned to give a grateful look to Naruto and a harsh glare to Niji as she left. Naruto's speech, however, had a much different effect on Gaara, as the bloodlust he had been feeling, the need for blood and battle, had strangely vanished. He was breathing heavily, and was absently rubbing his chest, remembering words spoken to him a long time ago. For the first time in many years, Temari saw a true emotion grace her brother's face. She saw him not as the demon sealed inside of him, or as her father's weapon, but as the little boy who desperately needed the love and affection denied him for so long. Naruto stood over a small pool of Hinata's blood. He kneeled down and brushed his fingers in it. Many were confused by this action, but Sakura understood at once. She'd seen him do this once or twice before, the symbolism was unmistakable. Hinata, he whispered. I promise. Naruto then stood, Hinata's blood dripping from his hand as he turned to face Niji. I will face you in the finals, and I will win. Naruto then turned away, his fist still clenched, and walked after Hinata and Kurenai to check to see how she was doing, as well as to check up on Sasuke and Rock Lee. Before you go, Naruto, the winners of the preliminary rounds must draw a number to decide their placement in the Chunin exam final rounds, said Aoba, calling Naruto back. What about Sasuke and Lee? He asked. Their senseis will draw for them as they are in the infirmary recovering from their matches, Aoba informed them. Alright Gakis, line up and you will be able to draw your numbers. Call out your numbers as you receive them, said Enko, holding a large box. One by one, each of the genins pulled their numbers. 6, said Shino. 8, Sakura read. Troublesome. 10, replied Shikamaru. Sasuke is 4, Kakashi informed them. 1, said Naruto. He then went to leave, but then decided to stick around, his Jougan open. Niji went to draw next. As he reached into the box, everyone felt a small pulse of chakra. 2, said Niji coldly. Many looked at Naruto suspiciously, before resuming the drawing. 5, said Gaara emotionlessly. I'm 7, said Kankuro. 9, added Temari. That means Lee is number 3, said Guy proudly. Alright, numbers 1 and 2 and 9 and 10 will have to fight an extra round during the finals. The winners of those matches will face numbers 3 and 8, explained Aoba, so the first match will be Uzumaki Naruto versus Hyuga Niji. The second match will be Nara Shikamaru versus Sabaka no Temari. The winner of the first match will face Rock Lee in the first match of the next round, and the winner of the second match will face Haruno Sakura in the last match of the same round. Uchiha Sasuke will face Sabaka no Gaara and Aburame Sachino will face Sabaka no Kankuro. The Sandaime then addressed the Genins. The third exam will resume in 1 month's time, so be sure to train as hard as you can and show everyone how far each of you have come since becoming Shinobi. Dismissed. Sakura turned to Niji as they were all leaving. You talk about destiny and fate. You have just sealed yours, because Naruto always keeps his promises, no matter how big or how small. One way or another he always succeeds. Niji dismissed the girl with a condescending grunt, not believing for a moment that a dobe who failed the Genin exam 3 times could possibly stand up to a Shinobi of his caliber. Fate was already decided. He would put the dropout losers Kazama Naruto and Rock Lee in their place, then he'd show whoever won between the Uchiha and the Sunanin with the gourd just who was the superior Shinobi. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.